भारत कीर्ति सीरीज।
Namaste. Welcome back to Mauryalok. Welcome to episode 7. I had left you on the cusp of going to see a movie. So you can guess what this episode is about. Yes, it is about entertainment, travel, public spaces, theatre, all the things that the Mauryans did and indeed that we do to pass our time. I will take all these in serial fashion. Let us start with travel. So travel has been a concomitant of the human condition ever since civilization began or even before. Migration was the first travel. It was done mainly for 2 or 3 purposes. Trade was a very big purpose from the hoary past. Army, fighting and conflict with other kingdoms was another reason for travel. The first routes for travel developed because of trade. Look at this illustration over here. This is an illustration of the trade routes that were there during the Mauryan period. There was an Uttar Path in the north. There was a Dakshin Path in the south. This is as far as the land routes are concerned, and you can see some of the main important towns and cities on these routes. There was also travel by water, not only the riverine routes which connected up with the Uttar Path and the Dakshin Path, given the big rivers like the Ganga, Kaveri, Godavari, etc., but also down the coast, hugging the coast, the eastern and western coast of India. And at the time it may have been easier to travel from Odisha to Sri Lanka by water rather than by the land route. So there was land travel and there was water travel. Look at this map now. This tells you what international travel and international routes were like. Here too there were sea routes and there were land routes, but the sea routes were perhaps a little more popular. So remember, this was the past. It was not a very safe time, and you had dangers from wild animals, from exigencies of travel, from perhaps maybe your resources ran out and you had no food, so you would not normally travel alone. You traveled in big groups, and these groups were run by caravans, and caravan leaders were called Sartvahaks. You can see a caravan, a land route caravan. This is mostly for domestic travel, the illustration that I am showing right now. And this Sartvahak was the leader of this group of people who traveled for many reasons. We have spoken of trade. What were the other reasons? Another very big reason was that of Tirth Yatra. So Tirth Yatras have been popular and important from time immemorial, and we have had really old tirthas mentioned in our Purans, in our Itihas Puran tradition. Think of Prabhas Tirth or Prayag Tirth. Urubela was a very important one. It's near Gaya during modern times. What was another reason? That was intellectual exchange, seeking of knowledge. So there were ashrams dotted across the country. Students and teachers traveled from ashram to ashram, and the famous ones attracted many people. Panini, for example, whose ashram is said to have been in Salatura in the north, was a very popular ashram because he was a shining intellect of his time, and that was the modern time. There were also huge organizations of shastrarths by kings who would call shishyas and gurus and intellectuals from across the land to their own kingdoms for exchange of ideas. This was the Indic system of exchange of ideas and growth of the intellectual tradition, and so people traveled also for this. There would be a few people who would travel short distances to meet their family and friends. There would also be artists. We have spoken of artists in episode 6, and artists traveled across the country and staged their performances in many places, cities, towns, villages, etc. We will speak more about them. This is as far as the reasons for travel are concerned. International travel would be mostly for trade, but there were also people who traveled as ambassadors from one kingdom to another. And we have some accounts of these ambassadors. Megasthenes' account of modern India is indeed very famous. So this is as far as the reasons for travel go. How did they travel? I have told you that on the land route, they had Sartvahaks with big caravans. Now these caravans consisted mostly of either people traveling on foot or people traveling with the help of animals. So there would be oxen, horses, donkeys, camels, mules, and ox carts were the vehicles like the cars of their time. So you could have simple ox carts or you could have Mercedes ox carts, which are very luxurious. If they were traveling on water, then of course there would be ships, reed ships, small boats, and for longer distances there would be large wooden boats. Even 1,000-oared boats have been mentioned at times as early as in the Rig Veda. So you see that this was a very, very well entrenched system of travel. And on the land route, what were the facilities? How did they travel? See, on the water you don't need a road. But on land, you need a path, a road on which to travel. So these roads and paths were made in a well-defined way. They were raised up from the ground. They were cleared of obstructions. They were made smooth for the passage of vehicles and for the passage of people. There would be wells dug on the sides. There would also be trees planted on the sides. And there would also be other facilities. During modern times and even before, guest houses were provided for these travelers, and they were places which gave you a lot of facilities in terms of things that you could do. You could sleep for the night, you could cook, you would get water because there would always be a well, and you would get security because there would be a lot of people and perhaps some security guards also. You would also get to meet a lot of people. You could spend a convivial night talking with people, drinking, eating, doing all those things that everyone likes to do. So you see, people traveled at the time and sometimes got the same things out of it that we do. They met new people, they got new ideas, they exchanged ideas with other people, and they got to see lives different from their own. Now let's look at the party scene. What was the party scene in modern times or in the ancient past? Extremely vibrant, very happening. There were many kinds of parties. Let me mention the Utsav, Samaj and Vihar parties. Utsav parties, as the name suggests, would be for festivals, and I am going to devote a full episode to them, so about them later. And what were Samaj parties? These were huge social gatherings where a cross section of society was invited. They could be held in the large homes of rich people or they could be held in public spaces. They would have food, drink, entertainment, and it fulfilled a lot of functions. People met each other. In these parties there was a lot of politics, there would be gossip, there would be that social glue. They had a cross section of society from different types of people invited to enjoy themselves. The third one is Vihar. These were kind of like the picnic parties. They were held in places outside the cities and towns, in woodlands, on the riverside maybe, on riverside gardens, lakeside gardens, and they included pleasure boat cruises. This was a very beautiful way of enjoying yourself, and you can imagine, say in Patliputra, people going on cruises on the Ganga river, on the Son river. So these were very popular as far as the Vihar parties were concerned. I have spoken of public spaces. So what kind of public spaces were there? These public spaces included big public gardens and places on the riverside where people congregated. There were also marketplaces where people congregated. Then there were drinking houses, as always, the pubs of the past. There were eating houses or the restaurants of the past. So there was a tradition of public spaces and intermingling of people in these public spaces. Now I will come to what is theatre tradition in India, the Indic tradition of theatre, the Natya Shastra, that which is called the fifth Ved, through which all kinds of complex and high Indic philosophy was simplified and presented to everyone through performances which appealed to everyone and which taught without being didactic. After the flowering of Indian intellectual thought in Kashmir around the cusp of this millennium, 10th, 11th century, etc., and the commentary of Abhinav Gupta, the Natya Shastra disappeared from public consciousness. It came back in the mid 19th century, a little with the publishing of the Dashrupak, a few garbled bits from the Natya Shastra were also published. But in 1894, Pandit Shivdutt and Pandit Parab published the full version of the Natya Shastra, and this created the same ripples in the world of theatre and performance that I had told you the Artha Shastra had created when it was first published. We have remained still ignorant of it, I would say, in the mainstream, but in the world of theatre, the Natya Shastra has made a huge splash indeed. The Natya Shastra, according to some experts, consists of three traditions: Brahma, Vishnu and Shiv or Mahesh. The Brahma tradition is a very clear one because it was Brahma who had asked Bharat Muni to write the Natya Shastra and to bring these performances before the public. And this tradition included the construction of huge rangashalas or theatres. The exact dimensions and construction of these theatres has been intricately set down in the Natya Shastra. You can see an example over here, and a performance is going on, a dance performance is going on in this rangashala. So these were built by the king, by rich merchants, by rich courtiers. It was not something cheap. This was like mounting a huge production, like perhaps with the budget of today's Endgame. But these were open to the public in the sense that people from all sections of society could come and watch performances in these theatres. What was the next tradition? That is the Shiva tradition. It is said that Bharat Muni also took inputs from Lord Shiva. And what were his important inputs? He introduced women artists, he introduced the Kaishiki Vritti, the Tandav Nritya, the Parvati Lasya. And the important thing is that Lord Shiv is an Augad. So these performances were held in the open, on the streets, maybe in drinking houses, maybe in public houses, in restaurants. This was an informal expression of the performing arts, and it was enjoyed by people without the formality of a rangashala. And this was a grassroots tradition of theatre, so to speak. What was the third one? The third can be called the Vishnu tradition, and this was the one which was connected to temples. So these were the theatres of temples, and you can see a reconstruction of one of the oldest temples in the Indian subcontinent from Vidisha, and you can see the reconstruction of a temple theatre. So these were the temple theatres, and performances were held over here. The main contents of these plays of all three traditions came from our Itihas Puran tradition. The Samudra Manthan, which you have seen in this illustration, or the Tripurasur Vad, or stories from our epics, were of course very popular. There is indeed a separate tradition of Natya Shastra which emerges from the Ramayana, and we can see a little bit of it even today. So who was an important or very popular playwright during modern times? This was Bhas. So the plays of Bhas, such as Daridra Charu Dattam, or my personal favorite Swapna Vasva Datta, all these were very, very popular. I will move on now, coming to the end of this episode, to some Mauryan specifics. The Artha Shastra mentions a lot of gives us a lot of information about theatre, the theatre tradition. So Preksha Grihas, or the Rangashalas, theatres as we would call them, have been mentioned. So there were Stree Prekshas and there were Purush Prekshas, which means all women groups of actors and all men groups of actors, apart from mixed ones. There is also mention of different kinds of artists, such as a nat, a nartak, a vadak, etc. The traveling troupe of artists has also been mentioned, and provisions for supporting these troops of artists as they moved around the country in villages, towns and cities has been mentioned. It is necessary for the entire village to pay for any troupe which comes, and to also pay for the construction of a temporary theatre where they can enjoy the performances. This is not to be done during sowing season or harvesting season because people cannot be distracted from their work. But during the monsoons, these travelling theatres stayed put in one place, and then because this was also neither sowing nor harvesting time, so people could enjoy these theatres. Then Arthashastra mentions Nritya, Natya, Geet, Sangeet and Padya. These are the 5 things which make up also performances in the Natya Shastra. So you can see that they agree with each other. Artists, as we know, have been used for spying, and we saw that in detail in the last episode, and there is a great deal about this in the Arthashastra. What about travel? So travel has been mentioned a lot, and we get evidence from Ashokan inscriptions, from the Arthashastra. We know about the provisions made for travelers because of Ashokan inscriptions. We also know that guest houses had their own rules and had to function according to them. In Takshila, for example, you could not enter the city at night. So there was a guest house made outside the city wall specially for this, where you had to stay at night and you could enter only in the morning. All kinds of facilities were provided for travelers, and this was one of the focuses of the Mauryan kingdom to make movement easy. But remember, they were also a draconian state in a way, so there was also movement control, and there was a mudra adhyaksh. You had to buy a kind of passport or a mudra by through paying 1 marsh, and this mudra was also checked at certain inspection houses, and this was an entire department for in the Mauryan kingdom. The Arthashastra also mentions leisure and pleasure cruises. I find it very fascinating because this is something that was the height of luxury. So beautifully decked out and luxurious pleasure boats were sent for cruises, and the king rewarded the people who he felt had done some good work with some of these pleasure cruises. We have come to the end of this episode. We have seen the ways of entertainment, the ways people pass their time during the Mauryan period. The way we travel and the way the world has become very small is indeed perhaps at a completely different level. As far as entertainment and theatre is concerned, the break is even greater. At some future point, we are going to be able to connect ourselves to our own theatrical traditions again. So perhaps there are some small broken fragments which we can see, but we need to do a lot to collect all those fragments together and understand them and realize them yet again. So stay with me as I move on to other aspects of the Janpad in coming episodes. Namaskar.
Next time, we take up the topic of social organization, the big elephant in every Indian room, that is caste. We will also talk about the system of marriages. Were all Indian marriages arranged? Was India a hellhole of caste discrimination and exploitation? Find out in episode 8.